Hello, friends. My name is Sakshi Shori. I am a student of ADTA 5560 course, which is Recurrent Neural Networks. Today, I'll be talking about the final project that we have done in this course. My project dealt with a monthly beer production, prediction, and forecasting for a data set in Australia. And the goal is to forecast the Australian beer production. So we will be working towards that prediction and forecasting. Let's start with the project parts, right? So we were given this instruction to talk about what we have done in the final project in parts 2, 3, 4, and 5. So to start with, I'm starting with part 2. The part 2 basically dealt with the simple RNN sine wave data. In this part, I'm going to create a sine wave data set, which is going to set all the parameters to generate the data set, build it, train it, and finally evaluate it. I'm going to make sure that it has two layers as demanded or as described in the project, one simple RNN and one fully connected layer in Keras. I'm also going to determine how many neurons that we're going to use in this simple RNN layer. I'm going to present this diagram first, followed by the steps and then the analysis in the end. On the very left, if you see these square boxes, that square boxes in blue, they represent the number of neurons in the model. And if you can see, I have chosen the number of neurons to be 50. So X1 to X50 shows the number of neurons that are being fed to the input layer. The first layer in blue circles shows the input layer, indicating 15 neurons entering the input layer in the model. All these 50, sorry, not 15, all these 50 neurons will go to a dense layer after passing through activation, tan H or sigmoid activation function. As it goes to this fully connected layer, resulting in the output of the model. So the green one represents the output. This is the fully connected layer, also called the hidden layer. So basically there are two layers and an output. One is the input layer and one is the fully connected layer, resulting in an output. Let's now build the model, right? Now that we have the architecture or the basic layout of how the simple RNN model looks like, let's build it. So first thing, to build the model, I imported all the Python libraries, splitted the dataset into training and testing dataset. The features were defined and the model was compiled, basically trained and fit the model with 10 epochs in this part, right? Each epoch basically results in a loss. This is our loss over time. And if you can see, it significantly goes down at 1 and then picks up a little bump here at 4 and then finally stabilizes after that, right? So this is how our loss function looks like. And let's now evaluate the model for that specific loss, right? To evaluate the model, I basically plotted the original sine wave data with the predicted values. And if you can see, the predictions and the original sine wave data is visualized here using the visualization. The blue one represents the actual sine wave data, and the orange one represents the predicted values. Sorry, now let's discuss the. Yeah, sorry. So let's discuss the results, right? Now talking about the results here clearly show that the model prediction is doing a very good job. It's pretty good as it doesn't show any too much overestimate or underestimated values in respect to the original sine wave, right? The error from the predicted value reduces big time to predict correctly, and the original sine wave and the predicted sine wave do not have huge gaps, right? If you see there are gaps, it's not the exact estimate or prediction that has been done, but yeah, the gaps are not that big. In the crests and the troughs, you can see some mismatches or little gaps out there. So it may not be a very efficient model, but yes, I mean, it's not that bad in terms of accuracy as well, because you still see some correlated or collocated estimates between the crests and the troughs, right? So as there are not huge gaps, as I mentioned, that indicates that the predicted values are pretty close to the actual sign values, which means that the model is efficient enough and can be used to forecast, right? So this is the result of part two. As simple RNN with sine wave data generation and model evaluation. Okay, so the next part that I'm going to discuss here is part three of the project, which is the LSTM cells, the core concepts of LSTM cells. LSTM stands for long short-term memory. And if you can see over to your right is a simple RNN cell, and over to the left is the LSTM cell. And you can see that LSTM cell is way more complex as compared to a simple RNN cell. So again, in simple RNN cell, let's see what do we have. This is what we have as an input that goes into the activation function, and uh, and this is your hidden layer, and they gets passed on to your activation function, resulting in an output mentioned as HT, right? In LSTM as well, the concept is the same. The inputs are coming from here, but these are the cells, right? So we do have inputs. It's just that there is much more stuff going on in this hidden layer, right? It allows you hidden layer allows us to understand what's going on basically in the LSTM cell, right? So the main concepts of classic LSTM architecture are the cell state and its regulators, right? The cell state is nothing but a memory unit. It's nothing but a memory unit of the network. The cell state carries all the information that is stored in, written to, or that is read from the previous cell state. Previous cell state via the gates that open and close. Even the information that comes from the previous steps can actually enter the cell state and carry all the relevant information through the processing of the sequence. Now, the control gates are analog in nature, and they are implemented with element-wise multiplication by using either sigmoid or hyperbolic tangent or tan H functions, right? As we can see here in the these are your activation functions, right? So these gates are very similar to the neural network nodes that decide what information will be allowed to enter the cell state or can be removed from the cell states, right? So the gates have their weights, and through a recurrent neural network learning process, it will decide which information is actually relevant, which information is actually relevant to keep or forget during the entire training process. Now, about the central idea of the gates, what are gates based off of, right? So gates is nothing but they are used to control the flow of information in and out from the memory. Now, gate is a sigmoid neural net layer that is followed by a point-wise multiplication operator as discussed before, right? They are controlled by a concatenation of the output from the previous time step and current input and operationally a cell state vector. So this basically describes the entire the cell state of the LSTM neural network or cell. Now let's discuss the part 4. The part 4 demanded to talk about the LSTM with the time series data. So here I have picked up a data set. As I mentioned, my project is about the prediction and forecasting of the monthly beer production in Australia. So my data set is here, and I've also attached it to the project files for my submission. The data basically contains two columns. One is your month that is described here, and the other is your monthly beer production numbers, right? And as the project demanded, the data set needed to be simple with only one numeric attribute. So here is the numeric attribute. There are about approximately 500 data points in the data set, and the data looks pretty clean and fine, and there were no missing values and outliers. So I went ahead and proceeded with the modeling. Again, the goal is to forecast the Australian beer production, and we will predict the beer production and forecast for the future days that how the production will look like. Here I describe the model overview, right? As I mentioned before, the goal is to generate the prediction effect of the monthly beer production in Australia. And this is the LSTM model that I've built on monthly beer production. And the data you can see that is using a sequential model with 3 LSTM layers with 50 neurons each. These are the green ones show the 3 LSTM layers with 50 neurons each, and there are 2 dropout layers, and I've chosen 0.2 or 20% as the dropout rate. And 1 dense layer. So after the dropout, the output of the LSTM layers go to the dense layer, and eventually it goes to the output. On compilation, if you see, you maybe it's not mentioned here, but when I compile in the future slides, you can see that I've used the mean square error as a loss function and Adam optimizer for optimization. And basically, this model shows that input of 50 neurons enters into the input layer with 3 LSTM layers, and the output of LSTM layers is fed into a dense layer, which is nothing but a sum of all the layers. And as a result, the result is predicted. The next slide talks about the model, right? How I applied the model. Right? As I said, I have used the activation function as ReLU, and my 3 LSTM layers are here. I've added these model as 3, 1. This is my first LSTM layer, second LSTM layer, third LSTM layer, and a dropout layer with 20% dropouts, and 1 dense layer to sum up all the layers. As an optimizer, as mentioned, I'm using Adam algorithm. Adam algorithm does have advantages over other adaptive learning rate algorithms in terms of convergence, speed, and learning effect. Therefore, I'm using that optimizer. It's called Adam, but its full form is Adaptive Moment Estimation Optimizer. it's actually very good for optimization training of the models. Model summary, you can see here when I compile the model, here is the optimizer and the loss function is mean square error, which is MSE. And again, all this analysis is based on the Python language environment, and it uses TensorFlow as deep learning framework for training, prediction, and comparison. You can see the loss function here. The loss kind of decreases big time and converges at epoch 4, and then it kind of stabilizes thereafter. Here is the prediction, right? The actual sine wave is shown in blue, and in orange shows the predicted values, right? On training the data with the above parameters shown in the previous slides, it can clearly be seen here that the predictions made by this model are not that great, right? I mean, if you can see, they are not as close as the actual or the original data, right? So the model prediction is not the real estimate, as it kind of underfits in respect to the original data points. The error from the predicted value is still high to predict really correctly. So as you can see, there are big gaps which indicate that the predicted values are quite far away from the actual values. This means that model is not very efficient, and it really needs to be tweaked so that this prediction can be somewhere close to the actual values. Again, as inordinately very large or too small number of neurons in LSTM, or maybe not the right input sequence length or batch size, or not having the right number of LSTM layers or a dense layer or dropout layers. If you're not having all those correctly, it can increase the time it takes to train the network, and huge training time can sometimes make it impossible to adequately train this neural network, leading to some inaccurate results like this, or maybe not very efficient results like this. To talk more about the analysis, as discussed before, on training the data with the above parameters, the predictions are not that close to the original data. The model prediction is not the real estimate, as we can see that there is underfitting as compared to the original data points. Um, there are gaps, so it might not be the most efficient model. And again, it needs to be tweaked. And in the next part of the project, I am going to talk about what all values did I have to tweak to redesign this model or this neural network. Next is part 5 that talks about the redesigning. Again, as mentioned before, I will be redesigning this neural network to see if there can be any improvement that can be achieved in this model. So to improve accuracy, all the model hyperparameters that I discussed before, I tried to tweak quite a few of them, and try to redesign this model. And the number of batch size that I chose was set to 32, and the network weights are updated after a set of every 32 training examples. Then I tried to adjust the number of training data samples, the length of input sample, the number of LSTM layers, the dense layer, the dropout layers. All those were tried to be increased or decreased or tweaked to actually investigate the influence of these factors on the prediction accuracy of this LSTM network. There was definitely an improvement seen on adjusting these values. And if you can see on removing the dropout layers and removing 2 LSTM layers, only keeping 1 LSTM layers with 50 neurons, could actually lead to a little improvement in the model prediction accuracy, which I will be showing you in the next slides. Again, as I said, I decreased the epochs from 10 to 8. So 8 epochs were used in this new redesigned model. The batch size was set to 30 from 60 in the original model. The split is kept the same. It's 20% training and test data split. The input sequence data was also reduced from 60 to 30. And again, the prediction was made based off of these hyperparameters in the redesigned model, and the future days for forecasting was set to 107 days. Here is the loss over time and the model compilation using only one LSTM and one dense layer. And you can see the loss kind of stabilizes after 4 or 5 epochs. Here is the prediction graph, and if you compare it with the previous graph that was with the original data, there is a bit of improvement. So this redesigned model do show a little improvement with one LSTM layer, no dropout layer, and one dense layer. The length of the sequence kept from 60 to 30. The batch size changed from 60 to 30. Number of neurons were kept the same, 50. As I said, I tried too large of a number of neurons and like about to 500 and too as low as 20, and it was causing way too overfitting or underfitting of data. So it was kept the same as the original data set or original model, I should say. Again, more tweaking needs to be done here so that it can be more accurate as compared to the in respect to the original data. And if we can tweak more, it can give us more accuracy. So this model definitely can be used for forecasting after more tweaking. Also, training the model for some epochs might increase, like I tried to increase the number of epochs to 50 or 100. And the important point is that it was hanging and I could not basically perform the model predictions using very large number of epochs. So training the model with large number of epochs might increase the performance and accuracy, but the performance on the validation set to prevent possible overfitting. So due to power computational issues on the laptop, the use of large epochs was a limitation for me. So that's why I put it either 10 or 8 that gave me good results. To conclude, this model is not able to predict the beer production with very great accuracy. The model can do much better if the input data is improved, but some technical indicators are added to the input data instead of just production parameters. According to the results, the performance improved a little bit when the number of input sequences was reduced to 30 from 60 in respect to the original model, and the number of LSTM layers were decreased or reduced. The number of neurons were kept the same. The batch size of 30 to 32 gave the best results. Again, the number of neurons were increased to 500 and as low as 10, but it did not improve much performance. When training the epoch with more than 10, the performance of the model was getting worse because the remote VM started hanging. So it was again set back to 10 and the results were concluded. Therefore, the main lesson learned here is that selection of parameters is very crucial to seek optimized model results. The forecasting was done using this model for 107 business days in future. The last slide talks about forecasting the uh, beer production for 107 future days using this new data. You can see that here are the 107 forecasted values, and on showing that on a visualization plot, you can see the actual values and the forecasted value for the beer production in Australia. It can be seen that it's not that accurate, as I discussed before, when compared to the real values, not a perfect fit, but it can be used because after tweaking and redesigning, this was the best improvement that was seen over the original model. And I tested and trained it to predict and forecast, as I mentioned, for 107 days in future. And if we can train and test this model with other different hyperparameters, I think we'll be able to get more better results and accurate results. So I personally would use this redesign model for prediction and forecasting of Australian beer production for the next few months. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and thanks a lot.